They have had business interests here for more than 100 years.
During the coming campaign, he may find the hands of the voters not so welcoming. Mr Randall is defending the slenderest Tory majority in London, a mere 734 votes. Success would make him the first Conservative to win a by-election in 8 years, the first, in fact, since William Hague. But the Tories of Uxbridge chose him because he's a local man.
People were looking for a local candidate, somebody that they could, that they recognised as a local man, as well known in the area.
Defending the seat, Conservative Michael Shrewsbury. He was born here. And as a
His predecessor, Sir Michael Shrewsbury, was a local man too, who entered Parliament after winning a by-election in 1972. Many Tories believe he held the seat at the general election on his personal vote rather than his party label. Sir Michael's family hope it's that which Mr Randall can emulate.
Do you think it's important having a local candidate?
Certainly, yes. Yeah, local man's obviously the best choice, yes.
But a succession of by-election defeats have left Conservative Party officials wondering if locally picked candidates can take the pressure. It was a lesson Labour learnt in the Greenwich by-election a decade ago. The National Party put much of the blame for the SDP's victory on Deirdre Wood, a left-wing councillor chosen as Labour's candidate by local members. Today they take no such chances.
The NEC is very anxious to ensure that a candidate is selected who will represent the party as a whole in a national by-election, and that's what they've done.
So it's somebody who can withstand the extra pressures?
Pressure of the media, the pressure of the campaign, all the sorts of things that you know as well as I do characterise a by-election.
Which is why the Labour candidate for Uxbridge, Hammersmith councillor Andrew Slaughter, was not surrounded by applauding local supporters.
I think it stinks. I think it's a total travesty of democracy.
I've been a member of Uxbridge Labour Party for 40 years. I shall not be assisting the successful candidate from this meeting, and I shan't be voting.
In the selection, nearly a third of members spoilt their ballot papers, protesting at the National Party's decision not to shortlist David Williams, a local man who only 8 weeks ago came within 1,000 votes of winning Uxbridge for Labour. His supporters don't believe, as party officials appear to, that Mr Williams would buckle under the strain of a by-election.
Leader of the Tory group stopped in the car park and said, "What's Dave Williams done wrong?" He said, "You're handing us the election on a plate," and I couldn't argue with him.
Labour is unlikely to budge, having ignored similar local complaints before. The Liberal Democrat Keith Kerr was chosen by local people, but from a list of nationally approved by-election candidates.
Conservative officials would dearly love to exercise similar control in by-elections from here at the party's central office. And they often blame their poor performance in recent by-election contests on the quality of candidates chosen by local associations.
You gotta be bad, you gotta be bold, you gotta be wiser, you gotta be hard, you gotta be tough, you gotta be stronger.
By-elections are immense fun, and I will never regret for one moment having gone through that experience. Having to face up to a lot of journalists who, certainly at the beginning of the by-election, I didn't know very well, and being faced with questions which I had to respond to very quickly, some of them about detailed policy matters in which perhaps I didn't have the full background that an MP would have. But as a new candidate for a by-election, that was quite a strain.
David Randall won Newbury at a by-election in 1993, like Uxbridge, the first to be held since the previous general election. The Liberal Democrats' success in a traditional Tory stronghold was a huge disappointment for the central office professionals.
It certainly is a war, absolutely. I mean, that's the only way to look at a by-election, and nothing can quite prepare you for the strain of a by-election. And I think even though we did media training with him, even though we rehearsed questions and answers at press conferences, even though we did the best publicity we could, you can never quite overcome the sort of national issues and the antipathy towards the government of the day.
The candidate was chosen by local Tories and sometimes found the pressure of national media scrutiny hard to deal with.
Would you be prepared to vote against the extension of VAT the government's proposing?
Well, obviously one would have to look at the circumstances, but I would do everything possible to prevent that, yes.
You would vote against the current proposals to extend VAT?
I would do everything I could to prevent a further widening of VAT.
Climbing the greasy pole of politics has proved impossible for any Tory by-election candidate since 1989. In Newbury, greasing the poster poles was the only way to stop them vanishing.
Local Conservative associations are very much autonomous, and they have a tremendous amount of freedom, and one of the freedoms they guard most jealously is the freedom to choose their own candidate. And I think the problem would be that if they had a candidate foisted on them, or if they were only allowed to choose from a certain list, they would react quite badly to that.
Tory associations may be persuaded to give up that power in return for reforms giving local members a role in choosing the party leader and in policy making. But that would come too late for Uxbridge. All the party's officials can do here is guide John Randall's campaign and try and reverse the party's dismal by-election record.
And joining me now to look back at this week's budget and look forward to the Uxbridge by-election with all its implications, Eric Pickles MP for Brentwood and Ongar, and former Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party, also Judith Church, Labour MP for Dagenham, and Twickenham's Liberal Democrat MP, Vincent. Judith Church, let me come to you first, and we'll start with the budget and then move on to Uxbridge. Did you really warn people before the general election who might have a private pension that they were about to be clobbered?
Well, what we said before the election was that we wouldn't put up income tax rates. We haven't done that. We've actually obviously had to make a number of changes in the budget to ensure that the budget balances for the next year, to raise enough money for the windfall tax, which we want to use to put young people and long-term unemployed back to work. And we haven't clobbered anybody who's an existing worker. Obviously, there will be long-term effects on the pensions, but at the moment, and the Conservative Party has been fretting about what to talk about on the budget, but at the moment, most pension funds are in surplus, and in fact have got contributions holidays going on. So I think it's, Eric, you might say that the Tory government, had it been re-elected, wouldn't have done the same thing, but I suspect it might have done.
But people who have got, say, I don't know, a money purchase pension scheme where they have got their own private pension fund, no one else puts any money in. If this concession is going to go, they presumably have got to put in 15% more money to have the same pot of gold at the end of it for their retirement.
Well, the important thing for today's workers and tomorrow's pensioners is to know exactly where they stand, and they do know where they stand with this government, because we have said that we will keep to our promises. I think your film showed, and certainly my moving around in the constituencies in the last few days and talking to business people, has been that they're very, very pleased with this Labour budget. It was a difficult budget. It was always going to be difficult, the first budget, and I think that in a few weeks' time and months to come, we will see that it's been a very prudent and sensible budget. And in fact, some of the things that Gordon Brown has done, I think, have been very brave indeed, and I'm quite delighted with it.
Where was the bravery?
Well, I think he had to take on some of the people who were putting pressure on him to say, you know, we're not happy, we want more public spending. He's actually found the money for public spending, more public spending on health and education. It was courageous, I think, to do what he's done, and I think that a lot of people in the party are going to be very happy about it, and certainly parents and hospital patients, those that are sick, will be pleased at improvements in our public expenditure on those services.
Eric Pickles, William Hague stood up, it was his first big common set-piece occasion, and he talked about alleged minor leaks that no newspaper was in the least bit interested in. Wasn't it a rather threadbare response to the first budget from the Labour government?
That's because it was leaked to newspapers. Newspapers rather like receiving news. But one thing he did identify, I think, really early in his speech, was this was the Robert Maxwell Memorial budget, where pensioners have been robbed. Now, I fought an election 9 weeks ago in which I can recall listening to Labour Party politicians saying, you can't trust the Tories on pensions. And here we see the single biggest robbery of pensioners